Ken, welcome back to the program. We've got an exciting show today. This is our first show together under the new Donald Trump 2.0 administration. How are you today, Ken?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, what is this? Day three, and we still don't have all the FBI's records on Butler declassified. Like if somebody tried to kill me, that would probably be the first thing I do is release all the records when I become the most powerful man in the world. But what do I know?
Well, you know what? I must admit, he's doing an impressive job of laying out some of these executive orders and doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, he's already given more press conferences and more salient press conferences in 4 days than Joe Biden did in all of 4 years. Before we get underway, though, I want to make sure people know that they can follow you on X at JD Cashless. You're posting tons of great stuff on X, and they can follow your journalism on headlineusa.com. We're going to get into some of the stories that you're covering on Headline USA. It's also important that people know that you and I are going to be doing a sponsor exclusive segment in just about 30 minutes. They're going to be able to join us for that on substack.com/@KenSilva. And if people aren't yet following you on Substack, this is a great opportunity to do that. Of course, Crowdsource the Truth sponsors are going to be able to join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Would you like to start, Ken, maybe just talking about some of the stuff on Headline USA?
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity. We actually published a really big story yesterday about the fallout from the latest high school shooting, which if people are on Twitter, they've probably seen it go around that this kid was apparently a black Nazi. That should be on the page you were. It was like the fourth story down. Yeah. A black kid who is lingering on these Nazi chat rooms. Killed a girl before killing himself. I think he wounded one other. And it turns out that this kid was into some really dark stuff. I don't know how familiar you are with something called accelerationism, but pretty much there's these terrorists that subscribe to the ideology of accelerationism where they want to bring down the West. It doesn't matter if they're right wing, left wing, Muslim, Antifa. They want to collapse Western institutions. And so they'll infiltrate chat rooms of these teenagers and convince them to commit things like mass shootings and other acts of
Whoa.
terrorism. And that's what we're looking at right here with the case yesterday. I do believe this kid was groomed by accelerationists.
Wow. And so, because, like, I mean, obviously, when you say black Nazi, it's a little bit sort of contradictory on its face, isn't it? I mean, the Nazis, it's funny how these things take on new meaning as time goes on. Obviously, a Nazi in 2025 is not going to be a member of the German National Socialist Party that participated in World War II. And the fact that a black person would even identify with Nazi ideology, it's got to be something different. So you've just introduced me to a new term. I was unaware of this accelerationism. Help us understand this. Could someone possibly be a black Nazi, or is that what this accelerationism is? Nazi-like ideology?
Yeah, I would say accelerationists, they find Nazis and the vulnerable ones, they convince them to commit acts of terrorism. So this started to come in the landscape maybe 6 or 7 years ago with the Atomwaffen case, which was this online neo-Nazi group. Atomwaffen is German for, I think, nuclear weapons. And basically, they were trying to bring back some of the old school Oklahoma City era type Nazi terrorist tactics. And these guys got infiltrated by satanic accelerationists and those guys were the ones that provoked them to commit a lot of like the most heinous acts of terrorism. Specifically, one guy, Joshua Caleb Sutter, he's an FBI informant and an avowed Satanist, and he infiltrated the Atomwaffen division as a FBI provocateur and kind of blew up the whole group. There was a bunch of cases where, he kind of testified for the FBI to put a lot of these guys behind bars. The question is, to what extent did Sutter actually, provoke these guys. I don't think he was just kind of solving crimes.
Wow. It's amazing. There's so many stories like that, and I love your coverage of these FBI. It's just completely made up stuff, like obviously January 6th, but you've been all over the Adam Dean Fox prosecution and other FBI malfeasance. So I hadn't heard about this Joshua Caleb Sutton, but it looks like he's got a lot of activity going on there in court.
Yeah, so the case you have open right there is from 2003, I think, and that should be where he was actually flipped to an informant. So this guy was in the Aryan
Ah,
Nations, which is a group in the 90s that was really big, has ties to like the Oklahoma City bombing and other such cases.
wow.
And eventually he gets charged. I think he was trying to buy some illegal weapon from an ATF informant. He goes to prison for a year. He comes out. He's been an informant for the last 20 years. He's made well over six figures. And here's the kicker. He runs a satanic publishing house out of his South Carolina mobile home. And he actually, he publishes physical copies of literature, flags with satanic imagery. And essentially, the FBI is subsidizing this operation because, he's getting money from the feds.
That's unbelievable, Ken. This is such a good topic for you to, I mean, I don't mean good, but it's important because it's interesting. When we get to the sponsor exclusive portion of the show, we're going to be talking about a new, really kind of breakthrough aspect of the Butler, PA story that just came to me last night. A crowdsourced the truth viewer just basically asked a question and sent me a news article that sent me down a rabbit hole that I just think people, their minds are going to be blown. But what you're saying about this guy being flipped in 2003 as an FBI informant, I've just learned that it was only, this is the story I'm talking about here. People are going to be surprised to learn that Pittsburgh University is specifically mentioned in declassified CIA documents about MK Ultra, and that UPMC was formed after a reorganization of Pittsburgh University's psychiatric department in 1973. I'm sure you know, and many crowdsourced the truth viewers know, that 1975 was when we had the church committee hearings. And so it's interesting to see that perhaps those were anticipated, and maybe they were making some shifts to try to hide some of this stuff back in 1973. The other thing that I wanted to bring up relative to what you're telling us about these FBI informants, and I just found this out yesterday as well. It wasn't until really the 1970s that this plea bargaining became legal. I don't know if people realize, but Brady versus the United States in 1970 and Santabello versus New York in 1971 resulted in a Supreme Court decision that explicitly upheld the legality of plea bargaining. Before that, it was just sort of done. And one of these things, almost like a lawfare type tactic where lawyers do it. There's so many things like that, Ken, where people just do something hoping it'll get over the line. And if it does, they've set a legal precedent. Did you know about this, that it was a relatively new phenomenon, that plea bargains were even considered legal?
When you say plea bargain, you mean like when the police leans on somebody to give up somebody higher up in the organization, like a proffer, or what?
We're
Or
going to
just
have
a
to look
plea
into
deal
the
in general? Are you talking about where they just get like 90% of the cases are settled with plea deals?
Well, I think we should look into this more, and you've reminded me we should tell the audience that neither you or I are lawyers. We talk about a lot of legal cases here, but nothing we say is legal advice, and anything I'm saying about legal precedents could be incorrect. So I don't necessarily have an answer for that question right now, but we should look into these cases more. My initial read of this is that the concept of, going to somebody like this guy, who's the Nazi and saying, hey, you know what? you blew up a house or whatever and murdered people. And so if you just plead to this lesser charge, we won't stick you in jail for 25 years, but now you're going to work for us. That's what I think the primary purpose of these plea bargains are. They say that they're using them to reduce the cost of litigation for the state or the district attorneys or whatever. But I don't believe that, Ken, because if you pointed out with that guy, Caleb, what was his name?
Joshua Caleb Sutter.
With Sutter, you pointed out that in 2003, the guy gets flipped, he becomes an FBI informant, and then now he's working for the FBI, selling Nazi stuff and, participating in crimes and being basically an FBI undercover operative, doing all kinds of things that we would hope the FBI would put somebody in jail for, not pay them thousands of dollars to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like I said, I think the thing with the plea bargaining is that like 90+% of federal cases get settled before without going to a trial. So it seems to me as a tactic where they just pressure people to take these pleas instead of actually having to collect evidence and prove their case.
Right.
So yeah, it's a
Exactly.
serious issue.
I agree completely. It doesn't seem like justice at all. And we're going to have a lot of, I think, legal precedents getting set in the next 4 years under President Trump, because obviously people are kind of on both sides of the fence freaking out about the January 6th pardons and all of that kind of stuff. So this guy here, he's part of accelerationism, and we don't really know that much about this yet, do we?
The details are still trickling out. So we know he was into Nazism because his manifesto, he published it like right before the shooting. The manifesto has a link to his Kick account where he streamed the shooting. That the video there, actually 99% of it is just black screen, but that's after the shooting. His phone is facing the ground. Um, and you could hear people in the background talk. Yeah, that's the very end. The cop picks up the phone and sees it's live streaming and he turns it off. So that's right after the shooting. But all this stuff is there's the milieu of chat rooms where it's just the most heinous stuff where, on the more mild end, you might be talking about National Socialism, but then you quickly get off into the deep end about pedophilia and just really dark terroristic activities. And yeah, kids are getting groomed online. It's really, really disturbing.
It
This is
really
like
is.
the Buffalo shooter, Peyton Gendron, from I think 2022. This is like the same category of case.
Wow. And it causes me to wonder, Ken, how much of that is, it's very fertile ground for the FBI to create narratives and to post all kinds of horrendous stuff and really whip the public into a frenzy about any particular suspect. It's interesting to see how certain suspects, we come out with all this evidence and all this online activity to sort of, frame them in a certain way. But then when we look at somebody like Thomas Crooks, where's all his online activity? And also, let me ask you something else. This 17-year-old kid, or however old he is in high school, he's writing a manifesto. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people I knew in high school couldn't be bothered to write a book report. The guy's writing a manifesto. It's a little, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not exactly Shakespeare. He uses the N word like probably 150 times, so
Hmm.
it's pretty just crass, signs of schizophrenia, would argue. But yeah, to your point, I mean, this shooting yesterday took place in the same city where that transgender woman shot up a Christian school a couple years, or maybe that was just like a year or two ago. And then
Oh,
remember they sat on the
where was her
manifesto.
manifesto? Right.
Yeah, so that I think that's because she just had it on her hard drive while this kid put it out on I think maybe a Google Drive document. So
Hmm.
there could be legitimate reasons for why the certain things get out and others don't, but it does make one, ask questions.
And this girl was murdered?
That's the girl that was murdered,
Wow.
unfortunately. And the person who tweeted that, BX, actually, you should probably talk to her. She's kind of the expert. She's my source on a lot of these dark accelerationist type cases.
Wow. All right. Yeah, there's a lot of good people to follow here on X. It's interesting to Elon Musk. And, obviously people who've been following know that Elon Musk and Sam Altman kind of hate each other. And now Trump has announced this AI initiative, which Larry Ellison gave a speech talking about how AI could be used to create mRNA vaccines. I'm not sure that that's the sole focus of the thing. Obviously, I'm concerned about that. Did you hear that little presentation with Sam Altman and Larry Ellison?
I'm just reading the headlines, paying very loose attention. I saw the Wall Street Journal published yesterday that Elon Musk has kind of poured cold water over this whole initiative. So is it even really going forward? Yeah, Musk clashes with Altman. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So Elon Musk initially gave the first seed money to OpenAI. I think it was $100 million to create a nonprofit research group for AI safety. And he's rightly upset that it's now become a for-profit endeavor. I mean, I'm sort of stuck on this because OpenAI and ChatGPT, in my view, is so head and shoulders above other AI tools, including Grok, including Claude, including Llama and Google Gemini. It is so far ahead in so many ways and such a powerful tool. I'm sort of partial to allowing it to be developed and do what it's going to do. I think this is already being a little bit twisted. What Elon Musk specifically said was that Masayoshi-san, the guy from SoftBank, has made a pledge of an amount of money that Elon Musk says that they don't have. And he does seem to be a little bit sour grapes that, Sam Altman is coming in there. Separately, Larry Ellison came to the podium and said that they're going to be able to use AI to basically, he gave the example of a person having cancer and then being able to genetically sequence the cancer, use AI to create a customized mRNA vaccine for that person and their cancer. Now, the thing that stuck in my brain is, historically, a vaccine has been, you're a kid or whatever, you're a person who's not sick, they give you this thing and it prevents you from getting sick. Somewhere along the lines in the last 4 or 5 years, they've seem to have shifted to just apply the word vaccine to any medical treatment at all that they want to force people to take. Because if you already have cancer and they develop something for you based on the genetic sequence of that cancer, how is that a vaccine?
Hey, that doesn't sound like my understanding of the definition. I get what you take the mRNA shot and it tells your genes to do something different to purge the cancer. I guess that's kind of the idea. I mean, that's about probably 80 IQ points above my pay grade, so I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I guess that's the idea of what he was getting at. It's some kind of cancer cure, but it's just interesting to observe the manipulation of language. I think if I had to guess, they would be doing something like this because a lot of the laws around vaccines are different than the laws around typical medical treatments. And also, we've just been through this 4 years of at least half the population getting incredibly pissed off at people who, shun vaccines. Like if you question a vaccine at all, you're immediately a crazy person. Mm-hmm. So if they want to force you to have to take something, they just call it a vaccine. And we've got somebody in the comments right here, Ken, asking if Sam Altman is implicated in the OpenAI whistleblower death. I know we're getting outside of the scope of topics that you cover. So people are already saying, yes, he's only implicated by social engineers and people who amplify claims that haven't been proven. So anybody saying that Sam Altman is implicated in the death of the OpenAI whistleblower is listening to George Webb and Ian Carroll too much. He has not been accused of that by any law enforcement body. And frankly, the evidence that George has presented and that Ian has amplified, very questionable to me. I want to get back to some of your other headlines on Headline USA because there was a lot of other good stuff that you had there. What else is breaking news in the world of Headline USA right now?
Oh, we just got the usual crazy news. Rep Tim Burchett believes there are alien bases underwater, the size of football fields that can travel 100 miles per hour. So some
Wow.
U.S. Navy admiral is telling me this. So, it's not exactly an investigative story, but if a congressman says something like that, I'm going to turn it into a headline.
And of course, Matt Gaetz has a show on OAN now. What do you think, Ken? Is Matt Gaetz going to retain the level of influence that he had when he was in Congress now that he's left?
I always like Matt Gaetz. It's kind of sad to see how he's fallen a little bit far. I think what he was doing cameo appearances like 24 hours after he was potentially the next attorney general. Like that's a fall from grace if I ever saw one. Hopefully he'll find his way back to doing something in public policy because I do like his kind of America First, non-interventionist, anti state secret police and all these issues that I care about, he's pretty good on.
I agree. I thought he was a strong candidate for Attorney General and would be effective. I also think it was true that he was perhaps too controversial to get confirmed. Getting to the Butler, PA stuff, I know you have been following some of the reporting that I did about drones and whatnot. And I can't remember if we've spoken about this detail, but are you aware that Matt Gaetz is Palmer Luckey's brother-in-law? He's married to Ginger Gaetz.
I was not aware of that. It's an interesting connection.
Isn't it? And she looks to be quite intrigued with Elon Musk, doesn't she? I would be a little bit hurt if my wife posted a picture like this about the richest guy in the world.
Oh man, I think Gates he uses Ginger to his advantage a lot. So you know,
Yeah.
I'll just leave it
Well,
at
we'll
that.
leave it at that. Exactly. Exactly. So we've only got another couple of minutes here, Ken, and we're going to be getting into some really mind-blowing stuff. Primarily, we're going to be talking about the right to know legal actions that you are involved in against the Allegheny County medical examiner, right? That's the one we're going to talk about.
So my action is actually I'm battling the Butler County and the DA. They're playing shell games with the radio communications of the local cops. So pretty much the Butler ESU released a timeline of radio communications. First, they leaked it to the Washington Post in like late July or early August. And then eventually Clay Higgins got a hold of it and the task force got a hold of it. I finally obtained the transcript. I think people have seen it floating around on Twitter by now. But at the very top, it says this is an unofficial timeline. It's not all the radio communications. So I filed a request for all the radio communications, and I was denied that. So we can get into that more for the paywalled portion, but pretty much they want to pick and choose which radio
Wow.
communications that we get to hear.
Unbelievable. But I mean, this is what they're doing throughout the whole entire investigation, just really limiting what everybody can see. And I mean, obviously they're curating the evidence to their own advantage to prevent us from actually understanding what was going on. We're also going to get into a bit of a discussion about this. I don't know if anything can be considered shocking anymore, but it's certainly irritating that I had won my right to know action against the Allegheny County medical examiner, and then a lawyer for them showed up after it was done, after the final determination was issued. We're going to go over the new final determination that overturned the decision, and you and I will discuss a little bit about what's going to happen next. I want to make sure people know they can join us for this sponsor exclusive portion of the show. It's coming up in just about 5 minutes. It's going to be on substack.com/@KenSilva. And also for Crowdsource the Truth sponsors on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. So if anybody watching is not yet sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth or Ken, now is a great time to do that. Please join us. We're going to be right back in 5 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Thanks for watching.